So welcome all the listeners. We got a very special guest today. This is Perspective by Paradigm, and this is Elite College Knowledge. Our guest today is Tom Kovic. He is the founder and principal advisor at Victory Collegiate Recruiting. Actually, it's Victory Collegiate Consulting, I believe, is the official name, but victoryrecruiting.com is his website. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. Tom specializes in helping student athletes kind of make a pathway to get recruited and get into college and play the sport that they've worked so hard to play. So really believe it's going to be a fantastic podcast. You're going to get a lot of good information from Tom. We're going to chat about our experiences and all the stuff we've done. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Tom, welcome and thank you.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to see you. Great to be with you today, and looking forward to our talk. So, Tom,
COVID-19 has been bizarre, right? We're all facing it. I've done some podcasts with admissions officers last week, I did a podcast with the dean of students at the University of Pittsburgh, and he kind of unfolded what they're doing. And, the landscape is changing, but, we had a brief conversation just before we got on, and you said, it is changing. There's a lot of noise out there, but at the end of the day, the game's still the same, right? Colleges are still looking to get people to play sports at their schools. Whether they play this year or next year, we don't know yet, right? But how have you kind of coached your clients in what they should do differently or the same?
Yeah, and you're spot on, Dave. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm not a smart guy, and I never will be. But I like to use a grounded and commonsensical approach with my family clients, my boys and girls especially. Because they're the ones that are going to be really making direct and robust communication with the college coaches. So my advice to my families, to all the prospects and families that are out there is really take a simplified approach to college recruiting, but don't be afraid to be politely aggressive, okay? When you break down the recruiting process, college coaches are really evaluating on three levels. They're looking for strong students, impact athletes, and those boys and girls that bring a strong character component to the table, potential leaders of the team, strong links in the team chain, okay? So I really think that where it's difficult to be able to let the coaches know that they're going to be attending this showcase, this tournament, this date because they're canceled, doesn't mean that you can't assist the coaches in the evaluation process. You have to basically just do it in an old-fashioned way, okay? And what that does is it really boosts the confidence of the college coaches knowing that our kids are doing everything they possibly can in order to be equal partners in this process. And the coaches really appreciate that. So being able to collect and to produce highlight video, demonstrating academic success through transcripts, test scores, school profile. These are all things that are basically going to at least keep this wagon moving forward in the recruiting process. And as we all know, it's all about momentum.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point because, I've not really done a ton of the athletic side of recruiting. I have families that have student athletes that are being recruited. And for those that want to play a sport, I've always said, listen, these coaches, how many kids out there play sports, right? They can't see or know everybody, right? That idea of being politely aggressive or however you put it is put yourself out there, right? That's the only way you're ever going to know if there's interest or if you can drum interest up, right? You got to go after it if you want it, right? And so I think it's a great concept to, and if the workout or the camp is canceled, hey, we're really disappointed it was canceled. Like, we wish we could come. Please take a look at this video. I'm still very interested in your school, that type of putting it out there is the only way to potentially get on someone's radar that you may never get on, right?
That's right. And, the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to really bug the college coaches that are out there. And, when you communicate with the coaches, you want to make sure that it's got grit.
Yeah.
That the message that you send is going to be helpful to the cause. Okay. Reaching out to college coaches just to say hi isn't going to work because, their checklist, there is a laundry list of things that they have to get done. And there's just not enough time in the day. But making that little bit of extra effort in connecting with the coaches and providing them with the information they need, especially the 2021 prospects where early decision, early action is on the short horizon right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And these college coaches, typically their timelines, knowing that is a major crossroad, are really now in early August, narrowing down their college recruiting 2021 list to their A+ list. And our boys and girls want to be on that list.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of really gathering the information they need and doing it in a way where they're, not bothering the coaches, but they're assisting the coaches in the process.
Yeah, and for the listeners out there, Tom is a smart guy. He'll tell you otherwise, but he gets this game very well. We all have our specialties, Tom, and yours has always been the recruiting side. Just to give you guys some background, give us a little history. What I know you were a head coach at a prestigious school for a long time, right? You played in the Ivy League game. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are.
Yeah, so I'm a former college coach. I spent 19 years at the University of Pennsylvania. I was the head coach of women's gymnastics there, and what a great experience that was for me. Typically, I would, take the month of August, travel the country, meet with my top prospects, give them and their family every indication that I had sincere interest in their daughter. The one thing that I realized when I was out there, that I was at a pretty clear edge in recruiting, where families really didn't have a good knowledge base as far as NCAA procedures were concerned, nor in certain cases did they have viable plans put together for what was going to be a pretty important life decision that their children were going to make. So about 14 years ago, I retired from coaching, and I started Victory as a means of providing that guidance, providing that coaching, just on a different level. So really now my role as an advisor is almost like, the guy on a ship that's up in the crow's nest, looking a little bit further out, trying to identify points of interest, and providing my boys and girls, my moms and dads, with regular assignments in order to connect with these college coaches and build that relationship in an effort to be convincing in their argument with regard to getting support in the admissions process, athletic scholarship, whatever the ultimate goal happens to be for that family. So that's pretty much Tom Kovic in a nutshell right now.
Well, and I think it's awesome that, you lived the experience, you did the recruiting, you did it at a high level for a prestigious school, and then realizing that in your experience going out to these families, they didn't have the plan, they didn't have the knowledge to do it, and understanding that, people are investing more money in youth sports. They're investing more time in youth sports than they ever have. And so it becomes, if you talk to a parent who is really trying to, why they're investing so much money in the training for their kids, it's because they're hoping that college is an opportunity there. And so it's amazing that, you took your personal expertise and you transitioned it to helping in all different areas of sports, right? You were a gymnastics coach, but you guys don't just focus on gymnastics. You focus on the recruiting process itself, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And that's, and I don't think people understand how painful this process can be. I had a personal experience. I was being recruited Division I, William & Mary in Villanova, and it was 2001, and the Villanova, they took a bunch of scholarship from baseball, Title IX'd them away, and the coach quit, and the recruiting class didn't exist, and I was out, right? And at William & Mary, I got a call the day before I was supposed to do the dog and pony show and sign with them, and I got a call from the assistant coach, said, hey, we got bad news. We can't give you a scholarship, which means we can't guarantee admission. If you get into the school, you're on the team. He said good news and bad news. And I was like, this is not a conversation we're supposed to be having. There's not supposed to be bad news right now. And basically said, hey, we can't guarantee your admission and give you a scholarship. I basically was a 12-man on a 12-man scholarship. I got bumped off, and they said, if you get in, you're on the team. And I got waitlisted, and I ended up at Franklin and Marshall, Division III as opposed to Division I. Don't regret any of that. Got a great education, and it was an amazing experience. But at 18 years old, I had a pretty big ego about my baseball skills. and it didn't work out, and I'm not the only person that has ever told that story.
Yeah, and what a terrific story that is, Dave. And I mean, it's there's a lot that you can count on in the college admissions, college recruiting process, and there's a lot of unknown that's out there.
Yep.
And you bring up a really good point, especially with regard to Division I, even 1AA programs like William and Mary, Villanova. Okay, compared to say Division III, and I think Division III gets an unfair or unfair reputation in a sense, and to really take the time to investigate every college or university that happens to be on your short list of potentials, and realize that I wish they almost would eliminate divisions. All they are different experiences. Okay?
Yep.
All they are different opportunities. And really, at the end of the day, it's a matter of the student making that experience and building that experience into something that is going to, sure, create a great 4-year college experience, but more importantly, position them for what they're going to be doing career-wise for the rest of their lives. And that's powerful.
Yeah. And I always say, the stadium wasn't as nice, the facilities weren't as nice, but man, the workouts and the time we put in had to be equal to what you did at any level of sport, right? A good program is a good program, no matter what level, division, whatever it is. You're going to put time into this, and you're going to college with the idea of getting an education and playing a sport, right? The idea of college is to get the education, to come out, have a job. Very few people ever become professional athletes out of college. The percentages are very low. So going in with the expectation that the outcome is a professional athlete is, I think, the wrong idea, right? Go in, work hard. If the opportunity presents itself, you most certainly take advantage of it. But realize you're going to come out as a professional in something else. And that's the focus of the college side, right? Live the experience, grow through sport, teamwork, camaraderie and all that stuff. And man, anything worth doing is worth doing right. So bust your hump while you're at school to do it. But the idea here is it is about education, and I kind of go back to your experience at Penn, and I know the Ivies and how they recruit. You're not getting a free ride at an Ivy for sports just because they want you to play on their team. You've got to hit the marks. You got to get the grades, right?
Exactly. When you're talking about the select institutions, whether it's the Ivy League, NESCAC schools, Franklin and Marshall, are perfect examples. Okay, they're the college coaches are not promoting athletic scholarships because there's no athletic scholarship to give.
Yep.
Okay? But where they can be helpful is really in the area of the college admissions process. I mean, I saw it at the university. I could say accurately that 70% of my student athletes would never have been admitted to Penn if it wasn't for my support in the admissions process. Okay. Now, that being said, the college coaches can't support everyone. Okay.
Yep.
So in a sense, what you're doing as a prospect is you're promoting yourself as a quote unquote true student athlete. Okay. And again, it goes back to the documentation that you're able to provide the college coaches to back up and support that statement. The communication that you encourage the club coach or the high school coach to have with the college coach in order to talk really about that third quality component, that character component, can be very helpful. But when you're talking about recruiting in the select academic institutions where the majority of them are actually not providing athletic scholarship, you're talking about the potential in getting support in the admissions process, which can be tremendously valuable. Okay, but
absolutely
not easy. You've got to roll your sleeves up, get busy, sharpen your pencil, and put that checklist together and execute.
Yeah, and Tom, a follow-up question on that, right? I know from experience that that coaches, they change, they take a different job at a different school, and those coaches that have really kind of planted their roots at certain schools can have a better effect. They have better relationships with admissions. They have the ability to do more. And in some cases, a brand new coach doesn't have that type of reputation, doesn't have that rapport with it. So it can really depend on the coach and the way that they work the system on their side, right?
Yeah, and take that a step further, Dave. I mean, when you're talking about a coach that has, really devoted time, decades to an institution, there could be families out there that might be concerned, is the coach losing his edge, as a coach but, I see that coach as a tremendously valuable piece of the college recruiting puzzle. In number one, he's been around the block so many times. He knows the ins and outs and the tools needed in order to make this a successful recruiting process. But now you're talking about the relationship that he has built with the institution, with the alumni, and the interconnections that come with being a student athlete at that institution, where that it's not so much in this, what but who
Yep.
I mean that that alumni networking and cultivation is so critical. Again, we're going back. Want our boys and girls to have a great 4-year experience. Okay, but what about the next 40 years?
Yep. Yeah. And I always tell my clients, listen, it's about the launch after college. It's about, having a career pathway. And there is no better resource at colleges than a powerful coach and alumni association, right? A coach that can introduce you to people. The networking, we talk about networking in the professional world all the time. But as I've gotten into the admissions process, it's networking with the schools, the admissions officers, the coaches. It's networking while you're in college with the alumni that take interest in the sport themselves, in using the opportunities that you're kind of surrounded by to further your own career and to give you opportunity. I'm a big believer in opportunity presents itself. Sometimes it presents itself very clearly. Sometimes it's a fleeting thing. But if you can grab the opportunity and push it forward, you can basically chart your pathway. The opportunities are there. Sometimes you have to find them. Sometimes they find you, right?
Absolutely. And, when you break it down, Dave, I really just think that today compared to 30 or 40 years ago is like comparing apples and oranges with the college process, with the college recruiting process. And, my suggestion, just as a simple advisor to all my parents and boys and girls that I work with is, again, and you mentioned it, the landscape has changed and is not going to change back anytime soon.
Nope.
And really building your personal family plan of action around this new landscape is only going to help you in this process. And being able, and I think an important point of that is, I'm not sure about you, Dave, but when I was an undergraduate at Temple back in the 70s, I wasn't giving really too much thought about the 40 years after my 4-year experience. I was kind of living day by day.
Yeah.
I think it's really powerful for our children, for our kids especially, to be able to begin to cultivate that thought and make that a part of their arsenal as they're moving forward. It's only going to help them in their career path ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the same way that you grow through like Little League Baseball, for example, right? The competition gets bigger and gets better and the focus gets stronger. But it's a pathway for decision making. Do you want to continue to play? How much do you want to work at it? All that stuff really ties right into life, right? How hard do you work at your business? How much do you want to climb the corporate ladder? What do you want to create? And I talk a lot about with my families from the admissions and the financial side is, self-awareness is a huge thing. If you can understand a little bit about yourself and make some decisions to better your opportunities future, it's huge to understand that. And unfortunately, I think for our kids, self-awareness comes earlier now, right? Social media, the idea of, the TV and the stuff that's fed, information flows significantly more than when you went, and significantly more than when I went to school. And so for me, we had the phone. We had email on the phone, have all the necessary, I can take a video on my cell phone and send it to someone right away, right? The instant gratification culture now means that you've got to be a little bit more aware at a younger age than maybe you had to 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago. And it's kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time, right?
It is.
So let me ask you some kind of poignant questions on specific subjects as far as college recruiting is concerned. When do college scouts really start looking at prospective athletes? Like when do they come on the radar?
Yeah, well, Dave, if you look at the NCAA Manual, the definition of a prospective student athlete is one who has started classes for the 9th grade. Okay? So when you look at that, let's just use that as a reference point. Okay? That being said, there are more stringent contact rules now with college coaches, prospective student athletes, where coaches cannot actually begin to initiate direct contact with prospects until just after the sophomore year in high school. Okay. So you think to yourself, okay, well, the definition of a prospective student athlete hasn't changed. Do I just sort of wait until my sophomore year to begin? And my suggestion is use that freshman year to become an educated consumer. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you look at the NCAA Manual, it's almost a language of itself, right? And it can be difficult to follow. Okay. So becoming familiar with you mentioned it, just earlier. Okay, I think it's really important that we empower our children and that they take the baton and run with this college recruiting process. But if they don't know the rules of the game, and if they don't understand how the process works, nor their role as part of this process, it is going to be a difficult path to navigate. Okay.
Yeah.
So starting early, 9th grade, understanding the recruiting process, understanding the rules, especially contacts, evaluations, and timelines that college coaches are bound to. Realize that you're taking a proactive effort in communicating with the college coaches. Put together that player profile, that one-page PDF that defines you as a true student athlete. Assemble that college list, and a streamlined college list that is manageable to be able to not only include contact information for the college coaches, but resource websites where you can poke around the different collegiate websites and learn not just about the baseball program, but also about the academic offerings they have at the institution, the social and cultural makeup of the institution. And what you're in a sense doing is gathering the information you need when you launch.
Yeah.
So when you do communicate with the college coaches, it's exciting and it makes sense.
Yeah, I think we give a presentation often that's called "Plan Early, Pay Less," right? And that, in my opinion, applies to everything in life, right? And it's not necessary that you're going to pay less from a recruiting standpoint. That's not my point. But planning early gives you a much better possibility of the outcome you're looking for than it does to try and be late in the game, right? There are very few athletes out there that are so good and so excellent that they're on the radar no matter what, right? For the majority of us, I lived this experience. I got recruited by William & Mary because I went after William & Mary. I got recruited by Villanova because I went to their camp. I talked to their coach. I was forthright. I was upfront. That all went away. And actually, Franklin Marshall had looked at me early, and I had no real. That was kind of I was in the stigma of D1, right? I was on this other pathway, and so when I literally called the coach, said I'm coming to school Friday. I'd love to sit down with you. And he goes, Dave Kozak said, we had you off the radar, a year ago with the anticipation that it was not a possibility. And I basically said, hey, I got in. It's the best school I got into. I'm coming. So let's talk. And, again, that was happenstance, but the only reason I was even on prospect lists at Villanova and William & Mary is because I went after it. So I think it's really, now let me ask you a question and follow up to your comment. So you spend the freshman year, you're collecting all this information, you're building out your, player profile, your maybe some highlight reels, maybe some workout stuff, whatever it is. Should you be reaching out to a coach at that point and saying, hey, just to let you know, I'm interested in your school. Here's me on a piece of paper, or how do you work with that?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to the college coaches and introducing our boys and girls to the coaches and providing them with some basic information. That being said, I think that it's important that our families realize that a lot of this communication early on is going to be one-way communication. Coaches will most likely get back, and especially with the Division I or Division II coaches, they will refer to the NCAA legislation with regard to contacts and timelines, okay, where they're basically, responding politely, but not recruiting earnestly, but helping educate the student athlete and family with regard to NCAA procedures. That being said, when you talk about Division III as an option, a wonderful option, okay, these rules don't apply, okay? So you're talking about communication with college coaches at a much earlier stage where it's not just one way, but it's robust back and forth communication. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so and that's something I did not know. So the Division III are not held to the same recruiting basic timelines. They can have.
Let's say that the recruiting rules, especially when it comes to contacts and evaluations, are much more relaxed at the Division III level. Yes.
Very cool. So and from my perspective, obviously I'm a financial advisor by trade. I do a lot of the financial stuff behind the scenes of college. So to me, hey, that could be a way to kind of have hey, this is a good option. It's here. If something else better happens to develop junior, senior year, or post that sophomore year open date, then so be it. But you're planting some seeds early on in the game that may give you the backup or a great situation. Sometimes maybe even the best and most ideal situation, and you let the other things unfold as they do.
Yeah, and even take it a step further, Dave. You're talking about the boys and girls that start a little bit earlier, and that's fine, okay? And where, there's, say, not much going on as far as the recruiting process is concerned, as far as direct communication back and forth, okay? But our kids can take it a step further. And there's a lot of college coaches out there these days that are sponsoring showcases on their college campus.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing, it kills two birds with one stone. Not only do they get the chance to get a direct evaluation right there on campus from an athletic standpoint, they make an unofficial visit.
Yeah.
And they can get a look at campus, take a look under the hood. It's all about gathering that information that is going to support each institution at a certain level on that Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. And I always tell people on the application, admissions, and financial aid side, make sure the student's engaged. When you're talking about the college athletic recruiting side, coaches want to hear from the students. Am I wrong about that?
Oh, they desperately want to hear from students.
Okay.
My pitch is really, college coaches want to talk to moms and dads. They want to talk to club coaches. They desperately want to communicate with the prospects. Because at the end of the day, it's the prospect that is going to be a crucial part of that 4-year experience, that 4-year relationship.
Absolutely. And have you seen circumstances where an over-involved parent ends up having a negative effect on the recruiting process?
Yes.
Okay. So,
and we've got to be careful, moms and dads out there. And, you talk about a different culture. There's just a different family culture now compared to, 20, 30 years ago. And, as moms and dads, we desperately love our children. We want the best for them. We are more controlling parents these days. And it's a very difficult assignment in certain cases for moms and dads to let go.
Step back a little bit.
Fear, there's a fear that where they don't want to see their children not necessarily fail, but make mistakes.
Yeah.
And you got to trust me when I say this, that college coaches aren't looking for the mistakes that boys and girls make because they realize that they're teenagers and they're maturing. Okay.
Yeah.
They're looking for the recovery.
Yeah.
They're looking for the kids to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, move ahead, okay, and do everything they can in order to strengthen their core as part of this relationship building. And that's a tough thing for parents to wrap their arms around. But if there's any piece of advice I could give today, I would give that. Tough to let go, but trust our children. They're gonna recover. They're gonna move forward.
I think there's a real big sentiment out there, that culturally we really try and keep our children from being disappointed, right? We don't want them to have that massive disappointment in life. We want them to, we want everybody to be happy and successful and all that. And so I think a lot of parents, and I will say that, as parents, I've got 4 children myself. And so, as a parent, there is more to manage on a day-to-day basis with kids now than there ever was, right? If you look back, I had a computer growing up, but it was a family computer that sat on a desk, was there. Well, my kids have Kindle Fires and iPads and stuff. And so, you're constantly managing content and data and information that's going to them. So as parents, we kind of get this we got to protect. And at the same time, we've got to try and eliminate disappointment. And, it's the participation award trophy kind of thing, right? Nobody should feel bad because they didn't win. But that all goes out in college. It is about winning. It is about the sport. It is about putting the best team on the field, right? And so I think that sometimes parents do a disservice to their kids in not letting them experience disappointment and failure to some extent and understand how to bounce back from it, right? Your point is, it's not how hard you fall. It's how many times you get back up and what you do after you fall down, right? And so I think to some extent in sports, parents got to let them go a little bit,
Yeah. And easy to say, Dave, tough to do.
I live it. I know.
And speaking just directly to parents, just a learning curve that just takes time, and there's a lot of patience. But our kids, like you mentioned before, they're growing up earlier, they're more mature earlier. Still, they're kids, and they can be knuckleheads, but that's okay. Right? Yep. I think once they understand the landscape of recruiting, once they realize what their role is as part of that process, and the work that's going to have to be put in order to be convincing with the college coaches, I think that moms and dads are going to just see their children literally change in front of their eyes.
Yeah, and you know what, kids are resilient, more resilient than sometimes we give them credit for, and it's when they take ownership, there's a certain pride in that at the same time. If you bust your hump to get in front of a coach and work the system and you go outside of your comfort zone, right? It's growth we're talking about. That's where growth happens. And so if there's a kid that's timid and doesn't want to go up and shake the coach's hand and does it, that moment where he looks the coach in the eye and the coach sees a kid that's growing up and showing, a desire, that's a big thing for kids and especially for coaches. I know, my kids from ages 3 on, hey, you go thank the coach, shake their hand after every game, no matter what it is. And sportsmanship is a real thing. And to me, the sportsmanship piece of it is huge, right? At the end of the day, we've already talked about not many of the kids that go to college to play sports are going to become professional athletes, right? They got to learn how to deal with this stuff. They got to learn how to be a good sport. They're not always going to get the promotion. Somebody else may get it for whatever reason, and you can't get all upset and crawl into a hole over it. It's the idea of resiliency, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Is it important for kids who want to play sports in college to concentrate on one sport, right? We talk about the singular sport athlete, and people are doing it more than ever. I've read studies from the Rothman Institute that girls starting to isolate and be singular sport athletes earlier are causing injuries. I know from baseball that Tommy John, that's the only thing they're doing 24/7. At what point do you think you should turn to specialization of a singular sport?
Well, I'm a big believer that our boys and girls should be happy.
Yeah.
And they should, pursuing multi-sports, especially during the early years, I think is just critical to development. Okay?
Yep.
We're missing a lot of that these days, where you see a lot of youth sport and families that, I'm in with that group of families that, in a sense, encourage their children to focus on one particular sport as early as the grammar school years. Okay,
Yeah.
Fifth, sixth grade. Okay, so by the time, for instance, my daughter was in middle school, her primary sport was lacrosse. Okay. But prior to that, she was engaged in a number of different sports and got, in what we feel was a diverse, healthy and wholesome sport background. Okay. But, Dave, it's tough to say, because I will say, I will mention this, that no matter how you break it down, the college recruiting process is very competitive. Okay. And at the end of the day, in a perfect world, sure, college coaches are looking for that true student athlete, evaluating them on those three levels: student, athlete, integrity. Okay. But at the end of the day, they're tasked by their athletic director to do one and only one thing, and that's win.
Yep.
What they're looking for is basically the student athlete that is going to help drive that program to a higher level. Okay. So what that does is, right, you look, wouldn't it be wonderful for our children to be able to experience this broad landscape of sport through middle school? Okay. Sure. Okay. But does that decrease their chances in being recruited in that single sport? Possibly. Okay. And you talk about a different landscape. When we were kids, when I was a kid, it was all about, I didn't play baseball for a travel team. I, played baseball for the local
Little League.
yeah, the local Little League, and where dads were the managers, and everyone pitched in to make it work. These days, youth sport in many ways is big business, highly organized, and families are putting tremendous resources, time, energy, money into these programs, but it's the nature of the beast.
Yep.
That drive for a college coach to, in a sense, develop that program that's going to continue building that momentum isn't going to change anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. And my experience, I went to Devon Prep and I played soccer and baseball varsity throughout my entire 4 years on both. And a lot of coaches had interest in me in soccer, and my love was baseball. I was good at soccer. I could keep up with anybody, but at the end of the day, I didn't have the passion to pursue soccer in college. I did have the passion to pursue baseball. And so, I always felt that, and I never did. Everybody was doing fall ball. Everybody was doing that. I would train. So I'd play soccer for my high school, and then I would train in baseball, but I would not play games and competitions and all that. I would train all throughout the winter. And I definitely devoted more time to baseball. But I never gave up soccer. I love the sport. It's a great game. And so for me, I think it was my downtime from baseball. When I was on a soccer field, it was different. It was baseball is a lot more mental of a game. You got to focus every moment of every pitch, and I was a pitcher and third baseman. So ball's coming hot on the corner, you got to be ready for that. You got to know what you're going to do. Soccer sometimes was just pure, you run. If you can be faster, you can move to the ball better. You can take people out. Like it was more of a physical sport for me. So it was a way to kind of back off of baseball at times. So I think that's a great point you make, and if I can summarize it, to me, specialization in sport is in some cases forced at this point, and I think your point is, let them get to 12 before you start going necessarily specialization. But if maybe younger, maybe older, but I think at some point you're forced to take that leap, or you're maybe falling behind, and I think that's the reality of it, whether good or bad, it is reality.
Yeah, I think our kids are growing up much faster, maybe faster than we want them to grow up, Dave. And with that, they're going to miss pieces of childhood. Look, it's no perfect world out there. But at the end of the day, I just think it's important. There's nothing wrong with really implementing that quote unquote fun component in our children's sport experience, especially when they're literally children.
And I will also say, for everybody out there, winning makes it more fun. Always does, right? It's always a better experience when you win. So part of kids really enjoying a sport is being successful at it and winning. And so it is important at some point to be more serious about the outcome of the event itself, which is to win in any sports competition, right? Mm-hmm. The idea is somebody wins, somebody loses every time you do it, right? So you guys provide sports recruiting support for all kinds of sports. Is there a difference in how recruiting works in each different type of sport, right? You had gymnastics experience, but I know you guys have coached baseball, basketball, lacrosse. There's no sport you really haven't advised someone on. How different is the process from sport to sport?
Yeah, well, the one thing that when you step back and look at the recruiting process, Dave, there's really a big common string that runs through every single college sport that is out there, and using that strategy. And what I'm talking about is, sure, you want to be able to get high on the radar screen, especially from a sports skill standpoint, and provide coach with every indication that you can be that direct impact player, that kid that is going to fill that important gap in the recruiting process. But when you really step back and take a look at recruiting, whether it's football, gymnastics, baseball, lacrosse, okay, it's about cultivating relationships. The 5-star prospects out there are going to be found. They're not going to have much trouble at all with this recruiting process. I can almost guarantee it, okay? Mm-hmm. But, for the kids that are in that, what I call the B file, which is still a very, very active recruiting file, okay, but very competitive. Mm-hmm. I think what they need to do, and what the families need to do, is really create separators that will basically help a college coach say, hey, I like what I see with Dave here, okay? And not necessarily that 5-star prospect, but, here's a wholesome young man, okay, who wants to communicate with me, develop this relationship a little bit further, okay? So there's a lot of common characteristics to every sport in the recruiting process. But once you build that relationship to a higher level, then of course it's going to get sports specific, and every college coach is going to be clearly communicating to the families, to the prospect especially, to the information they need, the gap they need to fill, and how you can bridge that gap between where you are now and where you plan to be, whether it's a year from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now. Okay. That kind of information for any prospect is very powerful.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if someone told me, hey, this is what you need to improve to play, or this is what you need to improve to get hired, man, I'm going to do it. I'm going to work at it, right?
Coaches are going to float out challenges like that because they know that those boys and girls out there just absolutely love challenges.
Yeah. Back to the Division I side for a second, because again, mine fell through. I understand Division III. Do certain sports give out more scholarship than other sports?
That's a great question. I think it's important to remember that every college sport has an upper limit to the number of athletic scholarships that can be awarded to a particular team. Okay. In addition to that, college sports are designated as either head count or equivalency sports, and I think it's important to differentiate between the two. A head count sport basically means that the stated athletic scholarship limit is absolute, okay? And the number of athletes receiving awards cannot exceed this particular number. Okay? And there are only a handful of head count sports under the NCAA umbrella. That includes men's and women's basketball, football, women's gymnastics, women's tennis, and women's volleyball. As an example, Division I women's basketball can offer 15 full scholarships. No more than 15 athletes can receive athletically related financial aid. Head count sports will offer athletes on average more athletic scholarship, therefore, than equivalency sport programs. Equivalency sports, on the other hand, are bound by an upper limit of full scholarships that can be split into partial scholarships, and in any proportion as long as it doesn't exceed that maximum limit. So as an example, NCAA Division I softball offers 12 full scholarships. In this particular case, coaches are permitted to offer 20 full half scholarships and still meet that limit or that upper limit of 12. In either case, I think it's important to remember that there is an upper limit of college athletic scholarships. Head count sports are absolute to that number. Equivalency sports, on the other hand, scholarships are available to split into partials.
And with the scholarship, I don't want to say it's a guaranteed admission, but it is some significant help in admission, right?
Absolutely. You know, they're basically, when a coach makes a verbal offer of an athletic scholarship, they're basically making their commitment.
Yep.
To you. Now, it's still a gentleman's handshake until they sign the national letter of intent.
Yep.
Okay. But, you know, they're basically saying, you know, not only do we want to provide you with an athletic scholarship, but we're confident that you're going to be able to navigate the college admissions process based on the due diligence that we've done in, you know, in providing the admissions office with your transcripts, test scores, things of that nature.
Yeah, so it's basically a green light, right?
It's a green light. That's the best way to describe it.
Have you noticed from your experience, you know, where there's a level that a child plays that makes them happier? Meaning, like, let's say you have a Division I prospect and they end up Division III versus a kid that goes Division I, maybe transfers out, too intense. Is there a happy medium that you've, and I'm not, this is not a rule by any standard, but have you experienced where a kid ends up Division III and it was the best of both worlds and it worked out very well and they were more satisfied than they would have been at D1? Or someone that leaves D1, my wife was on scholarship to Elon to play softball. She got homesick. Some family members got sick. She wanted to be there to help them. She transferred and played Division III for the rest of her career. And it was the right move for her.
Yeah, you know, it's all about fit, Dave.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, they're like, you know, for instance, you know, with me, with my family, my daughter next week will be attending the University of Pittsburgh. And, you know, everything is pointing in the right direction as far as that decision. We're so excited for Hannah. But it's all about this new crossroad that she's approaching. And she, you know, our message to her is that you have every opportunity ahead of you to create, cultivate, develop this experience.
Yeah.
Position yourself for what you're going to be, you know, doing over the course of the next 4 years, but, you know, where you're going to be moving, the path that you're going to create, you know, for the next 40 years after that. So I think that honestly, there's no perfect landing spot for our children that's out there. You can get close, real close, based on building these operatives that potentially make an ideal college experience. But at the end of the day, no matter where they land, I think it's important, for our kids to realize that they are so very much empowered to create this experience, whether it's Division 1, 2, 3, urban, rural, college town, 5 miles from home, 5,000 miles from home. It's about what you do in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you
Build
write
that.
your own narrative, right? I mean, it's open for you to do. You take advantage, and that kind of, to me, goes right back to the opportunity. You take advantage of the opportunity, or you don't. If you don't take advantage of it and you don't make the most of it, it can be a bad situation. And so, I think but I also think, to your point, Tom, is, the more you prepare, the earlier you get that self-awareness, the earlier you're thinking about this stuff, and you're trying to find that quasi right fit, whether it's 90% there or 99% there, that you focused on trying to find something where you're giving yourself the best opportunity for success. So that, if going far away and you're going to have a homesickness, don't look at those ones. Try and go elsewhere. It's the idea of self-awareness.
Yeah, and it's tough sometimes to take that college list and chop it in half.
Yeah.
But it is a really good move for families. Again, it goes back to what we talked about right from the start. Simplifying this process is only going to be helpful in navigating with success.
Yeah. So now I've got a question on current environment, because obviously there's some weird things happening with sports being canceled, eligibility being extended, people having, those that didn't get to play a senior season suddenly can stay at school and either dual major or go to graduate school and play at a different school because they have eligibility. Do you think that affects the recruiting class next year? How do you see that playing out?
Well, it's certainly going to potentially affect the recruiting class as far as numbers are concerned. Okay, so if you've got kids out there that just wrapped up their senior year and they're entertaining a fifth year to compete, okay, well, that's potentially one less spot that a coach is looking to fill, or that gap that a coach is looking to fill, especially with the 2021 recruiting class.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That being said, the only way you're going to find out is through robust communication with the coach. And if you're at the point where you've cultivated that relationship, get in there and ask some tough questions.
Yeah.
Okay? College coach is there to, college coaches are funny. They, especially in the beginning of the recruiting process, they speak in these, odd codes. They're so non-committal. Okay. But at this point in recruiting, especially with the 2021 class, it's their obligation to communicate clearly. So to be able to ask a direct question, that's very important. Typically it's, coach, can you give me an idea to how many guys you're looking to bring, to the class, and where do I stand? Okay?
Yeah.
And that may seem like two broad questions, but coaches know exactly what they're looking for, especially right now.
Yeah, I kind of call it like the whiteboard thing. They got a list. It's on a whiteboard. They know your number on that list, and you have to understand your number on that list, right?
You have to be able to accept it. And there is a level of rejection that is going to happen in this recruiting process. And our kids, our families just can't take that personally. They have to realize that it's not a perfect world out there. And you have a lot of families out there that are, in a sense, reaching for particular colleges and universities, and that is all part of the strategy. Okay, that being the case, as long as your due diligence, as long as the families have done their due diligence with regard to recruiting in the college admissions process, okay, there's going to be schools where they're rejected, or coaches reject them from a recruiting standpoint. Okay, but there's a likelihood that the right option, the right team, the right coach is out there and will provide that family with that direct communication.
Yeah, and I think, from the sounds of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the more clear and honest you are with them, most likely the more clear and honest they're going to be with you, because you're asking hard questions that you can't skirt that question.
Yeah, Dave, I mean, when you break it down.
It's none of our top prospects. Say that again, Tom?
Every college coach out there is really going to appreciate families that are just, truthful, upfront, and transparent with regard to,
Yep.
where they stand. Um, it's difficult, sometimes for our boys and girls, and coaches are going to ask, can you give us an idea? What other institutions are you seriously, looking at? And the kids will almost be afraid. Well, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. Okay. But actually what you're doing is you're helping the coach in the recruiting process by providing that information, straight up information. Okay. Because coach is only doing what you're, in a sense, going to be doing moving ahead while you build this relationship. Straight away, direct, clear information.
Well, and I think at some point, schools compete, right? They compete for the same athletes at times, and that can work to your advantage in some cases too.
Well, and in college coaches go through that every year. And for me, if I knew, coaching at Penn, that student athlete was looking seriously at Yale, Brown, and Cornell, it would make me roll my sleeves up and recruit harder.
Yeah, and dig in, right? Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Tom, that's our time today. This has been awesome. I could talk for hours to you about this. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. And, my clients are going to be so appreciative of your candor on this. And, I hope we can have you back time and time again to talk about things as they open up and change, because I've got to believe that, as you said in the beginning in prior to us getting on live was, recruiting's still happening. College sports are going to happen again. That is not going to change all that much, but the landscape and how they do it, it could change. And I think that, you having your finger on the pulse and really knowing about it is incredibly valuable. And I think what you're doing is amazing for student athletes and for families, just giving them the candid advice of what to do and what not to do. I've seen so many parents get so involved in it that the coach basically says, I just want to talk to your kid. Thank you for your interest and all, but this is you're not going to college. They are. So I appreciate it. This was awesome, Tom.
Yeah, my pleasure, Dave. And again, just great connecting with you.
Absolutely.
And, I look forward to when we can actually get together for a cup of coffee and
someday soon, I hope, right?
Talk further. Absolutely. Yeah. But thanks for including me. I really appreciate it, Dave. And, hopefully I was able to provide some good information, wholesome information out there. And I just want to wish our families out there and boys and girls all the best of luck moving forward.
Thank you so much.